Hello everybody, this is Dr. Sampath Chandra Prasad Rao. I'm a ENT head and neck surgeon, fellowship trained in skull-based surgeries, working at Columbia Asia Hospital, Sarjapur Road, Bangalore. So today's discussion will be on the COVID scenario that's affecting all of us, both in India and across the world. We've been receiving a lot of queries from patients and from the public alike regarding what needs to be done and what is the future when it comes to COVID and how to deal with the present crisis of the pandemic. So let me begin by touching upon a few numbers. So I can speak about the Indian scenario, and way back in March when the pandemic broke in India as well, we had just about a few hundred cases. Today we are looking at close to 13 lakh cases in India and close to 1.57 crore cases across the world. Unfortunately, 31,000 people have died in India alone, and close to 6,39,000 people have died all across the world. The mortality rate of the COVID infection in India is 2.3%, which is on the lower side when compared to a few other countries. But in the elderly population, the global mortality rate is much higher. And it's close to anything between 13 to 18%. So we'll begin our discussion with some of these figures because it's important for us to know the fatality or the morbidity or the mortality rates of this infection that is affecting all of us. Now, a lot of people have asked me a simple question: how dangerous is this infection? So what do you mean by danger? So if getting infected is dangerous, then I think that is it's not a very dangerous infection, because we have seen that in the last 6-8 months there have been 100-fold increase in the number of cases. As of today, I think 49 to 50,000 new cases have been added to the Indian pool of COVID patients. So getting infected itself is not dangerous. But how things go on from there on is what we must discuss. So if you look at the comparison between COVID and, let's say, H1N1, the fatality rates or the mortality rates of H1N1 was close to 0.02%. Now in comparison, the global fatality rate of COVID is about 0.6%. So yes, there is a reason why this has caused such a big storm, and there are people are talking about it everywhere, and there are lockdowns, and it's affecting all of us. Because yes, certainly it's a little more dangerous than most respiratory tract viral infections. Now, this comes from the strain of the SARS virus. We all know that. What does the SARS strain of viruses do? They affect the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract, and when that happens, they lead to respiratory symptoms. So most of these viruses behave like normal flu, and they come from the same family of viruses, but they all belong to the flu category of viruses. And we all have suffered from flu some point of time, or sometimes multiple times in a month or a few times in a year, and it passes off most of the time without any problems. But with COVID, there is a clear and present danger. Now, before we go into the symptoms of COVID, I would like to urge all of you to focus on the adage, prevention is better than cure. It's not what we should do to cure COVID. We should think of what we should do not to contract COVID. COVID being a very, COVID-19, that is, being a very contractable or contagious disease, we should change our lifestyle completely. What are the lifestyle changing measures that one has to adopt or adapt to in the present COVID times? First and foremost, we must make it a habit to wear masks whenever we step out of the house. It is also important for us to know that no public place is safe, especially with the emerging evidence that COVID could also be airborne. You could have somebody passing who has just passed by with a COVID infection. Just the fact that he or she would have just breathed out air could infect you if this is proven to be true. Earlier, COVID was supposed to be a contact disease, but now it's suspected to be an airborne disease as well. Now that makes it extremely contagious. So the first thing that one has to know and do is to avoid exposing oneself to the potentially infected areas. Make sure that you only go out if and when necessary. Avoid socializing unnecessarily. Avoid going out to public places, crowded places, to movie theaters, malls, restaurants and other things. I know it can be quite constrictive. I know it's a lifestyle that we're not used to, but it's very important that we change our lifestyles till this whole epidemic or pandemic comes under control. Second thing is, make a habit to wear your mask everywhere and to use hand sanitization measures. Your hands are the one which touches different places. You touch doorknobs, you touch surfaces of tables, and when you touch something and then touch your face, this is how cross contamination can happen. So make it a point to register in your mind not to touch places or touch things that are not necessary to be touched. If you are passing by a public door, you've touched a handle, move to the nearest hand sanitizer and wash your hands with a sanitizer, or if you find a place to wash your hands with in a basin, please do that. It is not a silly thing to be seen washing your hands or using a hand sanitizer, let's say 20, 30, 40 times in a day. Absolutely not silly at all. Okay, so if you've been to public place, you've touched something in the public, wash your hands immediately. Do not bring your hands to your face. So this is very important, because we always have especially with patients who have a cold or whatever, tend to rub your nose, tend to rub your eyes. So this should not be done. I know it's difficult, but these are very, very important things. If you follow this, you will not catch the infection. I won't guarantee you that, but your chances of catching the infection comes down drastically. Okay, and if there are elders in your house, kindly make sure that the elderly people in your house are isolated to an extent as much as possible, or if possible, if you can send them away to a more safer place, that would be ideal. Because as I said, statistically, the mortality rates of COVID is very clearly more in elderly patients, goes up to 13 to 18%, whereas in the normal population it is as less as 0.6%. Now, before I get again into symptomatology and other things, I want you to know what happens in a COVID infection. When somebody contracts COVID, it's a virus. It belongs to the SARS group of virus, and when that goes inside, the virus causes a viral reaction. This virus is a respiratory virus, so it causes a respiratory tract infection. So the symptoms are those of a routine normal cold. Now, if you take out COVID and talk about influenza viruses, the normal viruses, they also cause cold and they also pass by asymptomatically in several places. Similarly, the COVID infection can also be asymptomatic in several cases. In fact, in 80 to 85% of the cases, the COVID infection is asymptomatic, which means that you will not even know that you're infected, which is a blessing actually. Now, what happens in the remaining patients? The remaining 15% of the patients, they show signs of infection. Now, what are the symptoms of signs of infection? Now, as you may have symptoms of a common flu, that is sneezing, bouts of sneezing, nasal obstruction, rhinorrhea, mucus plugs coming from your nose, and some of these 15% of the patients may develop what is called lower respiratory tract or pharyngeal or lower respiratory infections. So this may manifest as sore throat, acute pain in the throat, and frank lower respiratory tract infections like breathlessness, cough, phlegm, sputum, blood-stained secretions and other things. Now, what happens when things get really serious? When things get really serious, the respiratory symptoms may end up being so bad that you may need hospital admissions, and more still, in the most severe cases, you may end up in ICU, intensive care unit admissions. Now, why does this happen? What happens when there is an infection? When there is a COVID infection, the immune system starts acting against the virus. This is a natural phenomenon that occurs when any external agents get into the bloodstream or into our system. So whether it is bacteria, virus, fungus, allergens or whatever. So there are B cells, T cells, cytokines, helper T cells, all these cells. So the T cells are the one which actually come in and cause and fight the battle. But before this, there is a front line. The helper T cells are the cells that secrete cytokines. Now, the most severely affected people, especially the elderly people and people who get into real severe respiratory problems, actually have cytokine crisis. Now, cytokines are substances that are released by helper T cells, which are components in the blood which go and attack the viruses right up front. Now, what happens when there is a huge cytokine activity? It overwhelms the virus, tries to fight the virus, kills the virus, and it also releases substances. This battle releases triggering factors of substances, components, which then go and activate the normal T cells. Now, when this happens, in most people the battle is won and recovery happens and patients recover. But in those few people who do really bad, we have observed what is called a cytokine crisis. Now, this cytokine crisis happens when the components released by the helper T cells that are supposed to fight the frontline battle become so aggressive, or their trigger becomes so misplaced that they also fight against the normal cells of the body. They cause body damage. Our own immune system fights against our own body rather than fight against the virus or the external agent. It also fights against the body and causes damage, systemic damage in the lungs, in the blood, and this leads to sudden collapse of the internal organs, whether it's the respiratory system, cardiovascular system. So we call it acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that is what leads to multi-organ failure and eventually death. So this is what actually happens. 85% asymptomatic, 15% symptomatic. Of the symptomatic patients, most people have a normal immune response. Some people end up with a very, especially the elderly people there. So now what happens in the elderly? The elderly people's immune responses are down anyway, so their capacity to fight itself reduces. Now, once a person has developed has recovered from an infection, he develops what is called a more long-term immunity, which is aided by B cells. And all these are WBCs. So B cells. So this is how this person may or may not, have immunity. I don't know. We have to figure this out. We have to see what are the long-term immunological responses after an infection. But there is a good case to believe that people who are infected may not develop subsequent infection because of local immunity, or what we call herd immunity. Now, what to do if somebody has a COVID infection? Now, if you are one of those asymptomatic people, 85%, you won't even know what that you have COVID. But now, if you're symptomatic, what do you do? Do you come to a hospital? If you're symptomatic, you don't need to come to a hospital if you are having very mild symptoms like a normal flu, a little bit of cough, a little bit of pain. Only if things get severe, that is, if you get breathless, if your oxygen saturation is coming down, if you have a very high temperature, then only you need to visit the doctor. This is also for a reason. If you have mild symptoms, again you have social responsibilities. With 49-50,000 cases coming up every year, no government in any capacity can be asked to provide beds for the entire Indian population. We are too big a country, we are too populous to be able to have a health infrastructure that will admit every person who's contracted COVID. That's not possible, it's not feasible. Even in the developed countries, that's not done, or it's not. So if you are symptomatic, test yourself. If you think that there is something wrong with you, malaise, upper respiratory, get yourself tested. If you test positive, stay at home, quarantine yourself and your family for 15 days. Okay? Because that is the time when you would transmit the infection. If you develop severe symptoms, go to the hospital and report yourself, and you'll be taken care of. Okay? Now, there are many people who need surgeries, whether it is an emergency, accidents, or even elective surgeries. So somebody has got a cancer, somebody has got thyroid, somebody has got a very severe upper respiratory tract problem, or ear problem, skull base issues. So what do we do in such a scenario? Now, this is a little difficult to judge, because quite honestly, any disease that is as severe as one of the things that I described, which requires a surgery, obviously requires early intervention. The earlier we do surgery, the better it is. But so what I advise is that if it is a non-essential surgery, suppose you can postpone this because this is not an essential surgery. A more essential surgery, suppose there's a tumor, suppose there's a cancer, these surgeries have to be done. In that case, I advise all my patients to undergo a COVID test even before they step into the hospital. Okay, so every surgical case has to be tested for COVID, because inside the operation theatre we have a huge team of doctors, doctors, health professionals, and all of us have to be very careful, and these are very critical areas in a hospital, high investment areas which need to be. So one day, one infection inside the hospital and we will have to shut down the whole operation theatre, which means that very critical areas of the hospital will be shut down, and that's not really advised. Now we take up cases for surgery, and as I told, we advise a COVID test, and we do surgeries with all precautions for COVID. At Columbia Shira Hospital, Sajapur Road, we have the COVID wards completely isolated from the normal wards. So it's a hospital which has very little risk of transmission of COVID from COVID patients to normal patients who are going there for other purposes. The wards are kept separate, the lifts are separate, and the whole system that deals with COVID is separate from the other areas of the hospital. When, despite the fact that a surgical patient is tested negative for COVID, the doctors still take all precautions. Now, I will have to enter the theatre wearing a certain layer of protection. I go inside the theatre, wear a second layer, a third layer. So we have what are called COVID PPE kits for surgeries. We wear face shields, masks. There is a very complicated attire with which we do surgeries these days. It's no longer just 1 or 2 layers. We have 2 layers of COVID itself, and then 1 or 2 layers of the original surgical suit which we do. Surgery is very difficult during COVID times. We are not at all comfortable doing this as a surgical team. My nurses, my attending staff, anesthetists and their assistants, all of us are quite constricted, quite claustrophobic. So we don't really enjoy having so many layers while doing surgeries. It's not the most pleasant thing to do, but yes, this is something we have to do to make sure that we are safe. As I told you, these are very critical areas, and in the most critical area of the hospital, like the operation theatre and the ICU, we need to be doubly, triply sure that we are completely protected against infection, and we also make sure we don't transmit infections to others. Even when you move out of the operation theatre into what is called a post-op or an ICU, we make sure that we are more or less in the same attire. All the attending staff are in COVID PPE kits. Okay. And there are guidelines issued by the Government of India, the State Government, the Medical Council of India, and by the hospital itself. We have taken this very, very seriously, and it's very important for you to understand that we as professionals, as ENT surgeons, as skull-base head and neck surgeon, and me and my team, we are completely responsible for what we do as far as COVID is concerned, and rest assured that you are safe if you have to happen to step into a hospital. Okay, so that's about it at this point of time. If there's any other questions, you can always ask me. You have our mails in the website, so you can drop in a mail and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.